Are Chinese motorcycles actually reliable, or do they deserve all the hate they get? Today, I'm going to be going over my experience owning multiple Chinese motorcycles. Over the past 4 years, I've owned a couple different Chinese motorcycles. Now, people tend to think that because China makes a lot of cheap bulk products that break just by looking at them, that their motorcycles are just as bad. However, that's not been exactly my experience. Now, I started my motorcycle journey on the Moto 300 SS. At the time of purchasing this bike, I didn't even realize it was a Chinese brand. I'd originally planned on getting a Ninja 400, so I had done absolutely no research on this bike. However, I was so excited to get my first motorcycle and get out on two wheels that I bought it without thinking twice. At first, I had no idea what a break-in period was. I had done a little bit of research, but I wasn't that educated on it. So the first 300 miles of this bike, I did not limit the RPMs. I stalled this thing, I learned to ride it. I kept on missing shifts, just getting confused, learning to ride. So this bike did not have a proper break-in period. I did change the oil at 300 miles and then eventually at 1,000 miles. And then I typically change my bikes every 2,000 miles. So not exactly a proper break-in period. Now, despite all the torture I put this bike through, I never had any major issues with it. It lasted a good 2,800 miles until I sold it. Now, fast forward 2 years, I decided to buy this motorcycle back. Now, the guy I sold it to, he ended up riding it home, taking it down a street or two, putting it in storage and not touching it after. So this bike had basically been sitting for 2 years. Now, for all the mechanics out there, you know the issues with a motorcycle sitting, not being started, especially for long periods of time, can cause. However, after dumping a can of seafoam in the bike, it revived that old gas. We got it running, and once we got all the old gas flushed out of the system, it has been running perfectly ever since. We ended up putting 1,000 miles on this bike since buying it with zero major issues. So all of this really speaks to the reliability of these Chinese motorcycles. A lot of motorcyclists have it baked in their head that these Chinese motorcycles are absolute garbage. They're not reliable, they're garbage compared to the Japanese and American manufacturers. These people are the same people that also spend $40,000 on a motorcycle that barely goes highway speeds, or they're buying 1,000cc Japanese crotch rockets to lane split going 180 miles an hour. So should their opinion really matter to you? I don't know. But what I do know is you should do your own research, find out for yourself. Like I said, my experience has been great. I have no complaints with this bike. There's been really no big major issues. Now, there may be zero issues with reliability, at least that's been my experience, but there is one big issue with these Chinese bikes. So the aftermarket support of these bikes. With a Ninja 400, all those other Japanese bikes, the Yamaha R3, you can go on Amazon, you can go on eBay, you can go on any parts website, and you'll be able to find anything you need for these bikes. Now, the issue with this Moto, and I'm sure with other Chinese bikes as well, is the aftermarket support is not great. You have to buy mostly OEM parts, minus a couple exceptions on Amazon or eBay, which for me, that's not that big of a deal. As long as I can buy those wear and tear parts, I don't plan on modifying anything, changing out the clutch levers unless they're broken, stuff like that. So it might not be a big deal to you, it's not a big deal to me, but if that is a big deal to you and you want to be able to easily find parts, get those parts really quick, Chinese motorcycles might not be the right option for you. Now, as I've mentioned a couple other times, I've had zero major issues with this bike. It's been super reliable. Now, I know there's a couple other Chinese brands as well that I didn't mention, but I don't have a whole bunch of experience with those, so I didn't plan on talking about them. But as far as this bike goes, this is the Moto 300 SS. I've had zero issues with it. I don't really think you can go wrong with one of these bikes.